They're letting people in. My name is there. Awesome. Start video.
Did you ever stress about us having 3 kids?
Ah,
3 kids? This was never part of the plan. These kids ordered the lobster mac and cheese. What if he wants to play golf? We're gonna have to outlaw.
let's see. I hope they can't hear me. I have to.
Working with empower all of our financial questions and answers. We don't have to worry.
Do you never?
Nope, always part of the plan. Join 17 million people and take control of your financial future to empower what's next. Start today at empower.com. This feels so. ADT systems now feature Google products like the Nest Cam with intelligent alerts when a person or familiar face is detected.
Man, he's not here tonight.
So you have a home with no worries. Brought to you by ADT.
That's me before Dawn Power Wash.
Soaking, scrubbing.
That's life. Was life. Now Power Wash gives me the power of an overnight soak in minutes. I'm sorry, minutes. With 3 cleaning boosters, non-complimentary soaks that help break down, loosen, and lift away food and grease. So much faster. Just spray suds on. No water needed to rinse it. But for mess, let the suds sit a few minutes before wetting. Even cleans.
May I ask folks to please mute your line?
Introducing Acethyl Allergy. Steroid-free allergy relief that starts working in 30 minutes.
I've just muted the lines.
So Marie, just confirming you have the closed captioning in on your screen?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
It's on.
great.
Bill, I've also just made you a co-host.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Bill, I really like your background. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you very much. You haven't seen this? I usually have this on, no?
I don't think I've ever noticed it before.
Ah, there you go.
My favorite Beatles album.
Oh, mine too. Actually, I don't know. I think I go with Revolver instead, maybe. It's 1 or 2 for me. One of those 2.
And I like Let It Be as well.
It's a good one. Yeah. Did you watch the what do they call it there? The 3-episode documentary
Yes.
thing that you did?
Oh my gosh, that was extraordinary. around
Oh, wow.
Thanksgiving.
I
Yeah,
got my wife got me at one point, like maybe like 5, 7 years ago. She got me all of the like a DVD set of all of the background tapes with no like editing. So it was just a bunch of them sitting in the studio, and as they're just hanging around eating, eating food and drinking coffee or whatever they're doing. And
that's awesome.
yeah, so I had like all of those videos. That was a lot to watch, but it was much cooler when they edited it down for
Yeah,
context.
yeah. And even still, it was long.
Oh, it was definitely, yeah.
It was fascinating, but good.
I agree.
We'll give it one more minute. People continuing to join. Okay, it's 7:02. As people continue to join, we will go ahead and call the meeting to order. Today is March 6th at 7:02 p.m. and this is the meeting of Wakefield's Commission on Disabilities. Would like to do a pledge before the meeting. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The mission of Wakefield's Commission on Disabilities is to address the needs and concerns of our disabled residents and provide their full participation in the activities and services of Wakefield. We also act as an advocate for the disabled community here in Wakefield, and we function as an advisory role to the town. I'd next like to take a roll call for Wakefield's Commission members. Lorna Davidson Connolly. Here. Kristen Bardall. If you would please say here, because I can't see.
Here.
Thank you. There's so many of you on the screen. I know Lois Benjamin is on the call. Janice Mirabasi.
Here.
Thank you. Katie Stratty. Thanks, Katie. I see you. Judy
Oh,
Tanner.
sorry, here.
Here. Thank you. Paula Thompson.
Here.
Thank you. Okay, good evening. I'm Marie Ray, and along with Lorna Davidson Connolly, co-chair Wakefield's Commission on Disability, we want to thank everyone for joining this evening. Before we begin our presentation, I would like to turn it over to Janice Mirabasi, who would like to acknowledge the passing this weekend of Judy Human.
Thank you very much. The Wakefield Commission on Disability would like to recognize the life and very recent death of American disability rights activist Judith Human on March 4th at the age of 75. Judy was recognized internationally as a truly extraordinary leader in the disability community and was widely regarded as, quote, the mother of the disability rights movement. A lifelong activist, Judy was born in 1947. She contracted polio at the age of 2 and became unable to walk. In 1949, institutionalization of children with disabilities was strongly advised, but Judith continued to live with her family. When Judith attempted to enter kindergarten at the age of 5, the principal of the local school blocked her family from entering, labeling Judy as, quote, a fire hazard. Her parents continued to fight, demanding access. Judith went to school and eventually earned a bachelor's degree and a master's in public health. She was at the forefront of major disability rights demonstrations. She helped spearhead the passage of disability rights legislation. She founded national and international disability advocacy organizations and held senior federal government positions. She also authored some important books on her life experiences. Judith wrote, quote, I simply refused to accept what I was told about who I could be, and I was willing to make a fuss about it. Judith Heumann, rest in peace, and with our thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. So a little bit about the format for this evening. We will first have a presentation by the design team for the Northeast Metro Regional Vocational High School. Can the individuals who are going to be presenting please introduce themselves, please?
Good evening, Madam Chair. This is Carl Franceschi with DRA, the Design Architects. Also with us tonight are folks from the school and from the owner's project management firm.
Thank you very
Madam
much.
Chairman. My name is Kevin Nigro, Managing Director with PMA Consultants, and I am the owner's project manager for the NEMT project. And as Carl just said, we have representatives from the project team here tonight. We have Vlad Levitsky and Carl Franceschi, two principals and presidents of DRA Architecture. On the call is David Warner, who's president of Warner Larson Landscape Architecture. We also have David DeBarry, the school superintendent, is with us this evening. He could say hello, along with Carla Scazzarella, the principal of the school, is also here tonight.
Yep. Kevin, I'm going to jump in there and introduce the rest of my team because I don't think I got everybody over to you. Thanks. So like Kevin said, we brought some of our team with us, made up of some of my advisory team that's been working with me on some of these issues. So we do have, as Kevin mentioned, Principal Scazzarella, but we also have a couple of our school committee members. Jim Hollins from Malden, Ward Hamilton from Melrose is with us. Our administrator of special education, Victoria Coliani, is here. And then a few members of our advisory team, Connie Rockwood, is one of our staff members who advised with us on some of the mobility issues. We have one of our moms of one of our special education students, Jen Ford. And as you said, there's a big team behind us from PMA and DRA, who I'm sure you'll get to meet later. But I think when the time comes, I'm going to kick off the meeting. So just let me know when you're ready.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
And Madam Chairman, this is Kevin Nigro again. If I could just add in, I'd like to thank town engineer and a man that wears many hats other than town engineer, Bill Renault, for sharing with us some questions that he had received from, I believe, your team and some others. So we've intertwined those into the presentation, and we hope we answer all your questions tonight within our presentation. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We want to thank Bill Renault too. He's always a great support to us. The public will have, let's see, following the presentation, the design team will be given time to respond to the pre-submitted questions, or if you've entwined them into your presentation, that's great as well. The public will then have an opportunity to ask questions by using the raised hand function on the bottom of your screen. Once you are called upon, please state your name and the city and town where you reside. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Once everyone who wishes has an opportunity to ask their questions, we will entertain a second round of questions if time permits. A reminder that this meeting is being recorded and it is also closed captioned. Everyone, please remain on mute until it is your turn to speak. We have also invited the disability commissions from the 12 communities that comprise the Northeast Metro Tech. If any of those individuals are on, would you like to introduce yourself? Okay, I hear a ping. Erin?
Hi, my name is Erin Ryan Heineman, and I'm from the Melrose Commission on Disabilities.
Nice
Also
to meet you.
Former teacher myself.
Thank you for joining. Maggie?
Hi, I'm Maggie Sheets. I'm Melrose Commission on Disability Secretary, and I live in Melrose.
Thank you. And I saw David.
Hi, I'm David Hoff.
David
I'm
Hoff.
with the Melrose Commission.
Garen?
Yes, Garen Boyd. I'm also on the Melrose Commission on Disability.
Okay. Amanda Bells?
Hi, I'm with the Malden Disability Commission.
Thank you for joining. Okay, I'm just making sure I got everybody. Tim Donovan? I'm sorry, Tim. I don't see you. Can you come off mute, please?
Hi, this is Tim Donovan, Woburn Commission on Disability.
Thank you. Thank you for joining. Did I miss anybody? I don't see any other hands raised.
Hold on. I'm here. I'm Judy Bushing from the Melrose Commission for the Disabled.
Thank you, Judy, for joining.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. Anyone else? Is there anyone from the town of Wakefield?
I think it's just me, Marie.
Just you. Okay. Okay, then if we're done.
I'm not from the Disability Commission. My name is Susan Jepson. I'm from the Council on Aging in Wakefield.
Okay, thank you, Susan.
Maureen was on at one point, I think.
That's right. I see Maureen.
Hi, all. I'm here, but yeah, I'm not just listening today. Town Councilor and Chair Maureen Butt.
Thank you for joining. Okay, so without further ado, we'll hand it over to David DeBarry. I guess you're going to start. Bill, can you manage the sharing? Yes, great, thank you.
Can you see the screen now, Marie?
Yes.
Great. We'll start. Again, this is Carl Franceschi with DRA, but we did want to start with talking about special education and inclusion at the school. There were some questions about that before we get into the physical facility. David DeBarry, the superintendent, can talk about the program accommodations.
All right. Thanks, Carl. So I did want to take a second because this is a very important meeting to me. I've probably been to over 100 meetings, some more important than others, some more enjoyable than others. And this is one I look forward to. So a little bit about myself. I am a graduate of Northeast Metro Tech. I won't say what year it is. It'll give my age away. And I came to Northeast like a lot of students who come here. I think my parents had given up on what they were going to do with me. I really didn't connect well to public education. And although Northeast is a public educational institution, it really connected with me, and it was life-changing. And so that I decided to become a teacher myself when I had gone to college. I started at Northeast as a special education teacher. I had worked in other districts. I'm very proud that I was recruited by some former teachers and administrators who had found out that I was involved in teaching, and they lured me over for an interview and they sold me as soon as I walked in. So my years as a special education teacher really formed not only what type of administrator I am now, but what type of person I am. Eventually, I'm proud to say that I worked up to be the administrator of special education, the position that Victoria Colliani holds right now. Following that, I was in a great situation where I was asked to be principal. And one of the things that made that so special was the prior principal who had become superintendent was very involved due to having a family member with severe special needs. And a lot of the work that we focused on was trying to make Northeast the most disability friendly school in the state. And that's something that we continue to work towards. So having the opportunity to talk about our special education program with people from all 12 towns is something that we've always would have loved to have the chance of, because we think that Northeast is a special place. So one of the things I thought I'd go over is some of the questions that came in related to the different special education models and the different resources we have for our students with disabilities. But before that, I know my design team is going to talk a lot about the design of the school. And that was, as I said, a very important part of what I did day to day. As superintendent, I don't think I missed a design meeting, especially meetings that had to do with our ADA compliance and working with students, especially with mobility issues, sight issues, hearing issues. And with that said, we expanded that to talk about parents with those issues, grandparents with those issues, community members who may use the school at night and weekends. So this was a really big topic for us. So along the way, as we know with any big project, there were naysayers, or there were people with concerns about all sorts of things, from abutters to the environment to the very, serious issues. And early on, there were some concerns about Northeast and whether we're ADA compliant and what we're doing. And it really put me in a difficult position, because what we were trying to do was be objective and look at what was best for our students. So I was grappling between, are these naysayers against the project in general and are just trying to pick things out that they feel might, make the project look bad? Were there alternative, reasons why, people were making calls and complaints were being made? So what I did was I pulled together an advisory group. And the advisory group, without being overly specific for confidentiality reasons, was made up primarily of people with disabilities and people with different impairments from the district. So we had students, parents, committee members, all sorts of people, and I pulled them together and we met with our design team on several occasions, and we really wanted honest opinions on how we could best design this school. And that led up to where we are today. So I hope, for this meeting, I know when we have some questions and answers, I hope that it will be purely about what's best for the students who have these specific types of disabilities, and not about just trying to knock the project, because I don't think that will help anybody. So I was glad. Once again, I will also thank Bill Renault for sharing some questions ahead of time to kind of give me a little bit of guide to go on, and also help the team make sure that we are prepared to answer every question. So I'm going to go through the first 4 questions, and those are the ones that came in that weren't related to design. And they were excellent questions. Bill, whoever came up with these questions from your team or from the community, I've got to tell you, did a great job. And I'm happy to speak about those things. So the first question was about our admissions criteria for students versus disabilities and non-disability peers. And so how that's affected. So at Northeast, we have the same admissions criteria for all students. So we are not informed until after acceptance whether a student is on an IEP, is on a 504, it has any sorts of accommodations that need help. And we think that's great. So we love the idea that there will never be a question that we are intentionally trying to avoid accepting students with disabilities. In fact, something I'll get into in a minute is we have one of the highest rates of students' disabilities in the entire state of Massachusetts. The entire state. We have a much higher rate than every one of our 12 districts. And that's something that we are so proud of, so proud of. And there's talk every now and then about changing our admissions criteria. And one of the first things I think of is, will that affect the students with disabilities that get accepted? And would that in some way have a negative impact? And that's something Northeast does not want to have. Our diversity, not only with our socioeconomic and our ethnicity, makes us such a great place to be, but our diversity with different students with different needs is really what makes us great. The only time that I ever said I wish we didn't have a blind admissions was very recently when I was talking to one of the moms who has a student who's in a wheelchair. And we were talking about an initiative that we're working on now to have sports, wheelchair sports. So we were talking about trying to bring together students throughout the entire district who are in wheelchairs or have different physical disabilities in developing the very first basketball league for these students. And I said, wouldn't it be great if we could recruit students who had these disabilities? Because for 50 years, it's been a challenge, and we understand the building made it difficult. And, you know, there were times where I'm sure people didn't apply, even though we would have accommodated them. So I said, it'd be great if we could accept them anyway. And that's probably the only time that I was against our blind admissions policy. So we think it's working great, and we look forward to, you know, that number increasing. I'm going to move on to the second question. So what are some examples of special education services you provide to your students to help them be successful and included in their typical developing peers? Please include examples for both those students on IEPs as well as 504 accommodation plans. How are these services provided? For example, in a separate setting. Whoop, I think I lost somebody here. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. The computer's a little screwy there for a second. It's probably getting sick of me talking so much. I apologize. But Northeast, like the Massachusetts model and the national model, is an inclusion model. So when I started as a teacher at Northeast, I'm proud to say I was the very first co-teacher at Northeast. And I was actually hired for my experience in co-teaching, because I always had a mission that rather than separate students on IEPs and with disabilities into other classrooms, why don't we bring the special education teachers into the classrooms and into the shops? And that is so common right now. However, 15, 20 years ago, it wasn't common, and it wasn't something that a lot of schools were looking towards. So when I came in, our first year, we had one co-taught class. Our second year, we had 4. And now, God, I can't even tell you, we probably have about 40 classes right now. Almost all of our classes, except for students who need specialized instructions, are in a co-taught class. In addition to that, we are expected, and we do provide all of the necessary services that a regular public school would offer. For example, we have, reading specialists, we have a behavior specialist, we have vocational specialists that cover all of our shops who are trained in both special education and in the shops that we're in. Speech and language services, we have occupational therapy, physical therapy, assistive technology. We work with the Carroll Center for the Blind. We have vision services, but with teachers are visually impaired if necessary. We have consultants that we work with on orientation and mobility services when necessary. We have an audiologist that we work with. So we cover everything and we do our best. And I think that's why our special education numbers are so high. I think word has gotten out there that we are, regardless of our old building, one of the most special education and disability friendly schools in the area. And we are very proud for that. So I'm going to go on, and we have another question. I'm going to read it up, and I only have two more. So this question came in from Bill. An even greater percentage of individuals with intellectual disabilities are unemployed. Including this population in vocational education would help to increase employment for this population and help these students to find meaningful employment. So another one that is really close to home, when I was a special education teacher and I was saving for a family, I worked many years as a job coach for students with disabilities. So part of what I would do is work to help students with disabilities at all levels, physical, intellectually, and emotionally. Many were living in group homes. I would help them find jobs, but even more fun, what I would do is I would stay on board and I would help them get trained in those jobs. And that really, again, had a lasting impression on not just my career, but my life. So we understand how important it is not to just, educate people, but to help them be successful when they are going to transition into the workforce. So we do lots of things in that area. We partner with the Partners for Youth with Disabilities. We refer IEP students as early as freshman year to pre-employment training services. Our students can attend directly with PYD or can participate in sessions that they offer. We refer our students their junior year, all of our IEP students, to 688 services if needed. If a student is on an IEP or 504 plan and does not require a 688 referral, we refer them to the Mass Rehab for additional services after graduation. So we have a great wraparound service, and we have a great special education transition team to really help us facilitate this. So number 3, what percentage of your current student population are in the lower incidence disability categories? For example, autism and students with disability and with intellectual disabilities. With the increase in the school size, do you envision being able to increase education to this population? Absolutely. We look forward to expanding. We don't know exactly how our applications play out from year to year. However, with a 25% increase in enrollment, we're expecting a 25% increase on average of all of our different subgroups. And that is our hope, that it would be at least at a minimum of students on IEPs. To give you some examples of some of the primary disabilities, and as you may know, there are also many secondary disabilities that go along with students with disabilities. We have 9% of our students are on the autism spectrum. We have 5% with the communication disability. 10% have emotional disabilities. 31 have health disabilities such as ADHD and such. We have students with sensory and hearing disabilities, visually impaired students, Not as many as some of the other disabilities, as everyone has stated earlier. 3% intellectual and 33% specific learning disability and 9% neurological disability. So we really have a wide spectrum of students with disabilities that we work with. And again, we think that that's what makes us so great as a school. Number 4, again, is a very similar question. With the increase in school size, do you envision any additions to your course of studies and vocational training? Yep, we're bringing in a marketing program. We're also bringing in biotech, and we're bringing in medical assisting. So those are 3 programs that we feel that our students with disabilities can be very successful in. So I will be available, obviously. I'm not going anywhere after the presentation, but I'm going to turn it over to Carl and his team to talk a little bit about the actual design of the building. But thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dave. This is Carl Franceschi again with DRA Architects, and thanks for this opportunity of being able to share, you know, the design of the new school with you. And thanks for inviting the other communities too. This is a great opportunity for us, and we hope we can answer all your questions this evening. But just to introduce, for those who aren't familiar with it, I just want to quickly, you know, orient you to what the proposal is, and then we'll focus in on the specific accessibility aspects of the design. This site plan that you can see on the screen now is of the entire property that Northeast MetroTech owns. It is adjacent to Breakheart Reservation, but it is not a part of Breakheart Reservation. It is, you know, the property that the school has occupied since the 1960s. The existing building is outlined here in orange at the end of Hemlock Road, coming down from the top of the slide from Wakefield High School. For those who are familiar, the guard shack sits right here on the property line, and the school basically occupies the right-hand side, let's call it east side of this property right now, with the school, with the parking lot in front, with the athletic fields wrapping around back. And the remainder of the site is currently a wooded hillside. But being at the end of a dead-end road is not the safest or the most functional operationally. So certainly one of the prime objectives here in developing a new school was to get an additional access point to the site. And so coming in from Farm Street, you can see there's a new driveway here coming in right near the Saugus line, right near the power lines that exist for those who are familiar with this end of Farm Street. So the new driveway will come in and up the hill, and the new school will be sited on the hillside here on an area that is cleared and leveled for the most part. I'll get into the more specifics in a moment of the elevations, but you can see that the school has the new driveway coming in along the front, back down the hill and connecting back to the guard shack there. So there will be 2 ways in and out of the site in the future. We do anticipate a majority of the traffic probably leaving by this, let's call it the western driveway towards Farm Street here, because it is a regional school. We're not dealing just with Wakefield students. And of course, for those who are familiar, the traffic on Hemlock Road at Wakefield High School, where it intersects Farm Street, is pretty chaotic right now. It is trying to be addressed, we understand, from the new high school project as well, but still having 2 ways in and out is not only advocated by the school administration, but by Wakefield town officials too. The fire, police, first responders recognize that it's a significant improvement to the project. The building itself, as I say, sits here with a major parking lot on one side, but there's also parking on the other three sides of the building as well. There is a service drive all around the school, partly for good access to all of the career tech shops that require deliveries, and they all have overhead doors. There are auto shops, there are carpentry and electrical shops that get deliveries and so forth. Of course, it's also great for fire vehicles to be able to circle a new project as well. And all of these parking lots all have accessible parking as part of them. All of them have accessible entries as well. And I'll show you a close-up of the school in a moment. And so certainly, as Dave DeBarry mentioned, the superintendent, that accessibility and sort of universal design what was certainly important in the development of the plan itself here. Of course, once the new building is constructed and occupied, the existing building will be demolished, and in its place there'll be new athletic fields and kind of reworking of the parking lot. But there will still be parking at the level of the playing fields. There will still be access and dedicated parking to Breakheart Reservation. Again, for those familiar with it, the stone gates to Breakheart are right down here in this portion of the site, if you can see my cursor. And the entrance and all of Breakheart's roads within the park remain unchanged by this development here. And so to zoom in a bit here on the new school itself. So again, this light colored area is the building, the sort of overhead view of the building itself. There are several access points to the building because, again, the nature of the school, there's not only the main entrance for the school, but for those familiar with it, they do have a restaurant and a cosmetology salon that are open to the public. So we have allocated a dedicated customer entrance in the center of the building. And then at one end of the building is where the gymnasium and auditorium are. And those are areas that are often open after hours or on weekends. And so there's a dedicated, what we call events entrance at this end. And then around the rear of the building, the school also offers a preschool program where they train, the high school students to deal with, an actual preschool environment that does accept 3 and 4 year olds. And so there's a drop-off area and a dedicated entrance for that program here at the backside of the school as well. And then, as I said, there's parking to support each of these access points, and each of these access points has accessible parking and a universally accessible entrance point at grade. The school sits, you can see these numbers, 163.5 is the elevation above sea level, and so you'll see some other numbers around the site. Basically, the site on these 3 sides is at the same level at the school, gently sloping away from the school at a less than 2% grade. And then there is a lower level on this right-hand end of the building where it does drop one entire floor. So there is a lower level. But again, these parking spaces and these entrances down there are all at grade and accessible. And that's the connection point to the lower parking and the lower athletic fields that we'll highlight in a moment. I do want to, you may not be able to see this chart here in total, but the existing school has 11 accessible parking spaces now out of a total count of 416. We are expanding the number of parking spaces available on the site to 476 parking spaces. That's directly related to the fact that the enrollment of the school is proposed to increase, but we're actually doubling the number of accessible parking spaces to 22. So it's almost 5% of the parking spaces will be accessible. And as I pointed out, they are equally distributed around the site. And just to walk you through sort of a day in the life of the school, there are several access points to the building for students. If they arrive by bus in the morning, There is a bus drop-off here at the front, and access into the school, again, all at grade, is available at those 3 access points across the front of the building. If they arrive by car, driven by their parents or guardian, they're dropped off here at the main school entrance across this east or west side of the school, and can enter in there. If they drive themselves, if they need accessible parking, they can make use of the accessible parking here in the main lot and enter the building. If they park in the lower student parking lot, they arrive at the building back here at this pedestrian entrance after coming up the stairs and ramp up the hillside where it's labeled 143.5. They can come in and access the school and an elevator right at that point as well. So all of these points are just, a 6-inch curb with a curb cut away from each of these entrance points. And for those parents dropping off their young ones at the preschool around the back, again, there is a accessible parking spot there if the parent should need it. And again, there's an accessible entrance at grade directly to that preschool area. And there's a playground directly off of that preschool area, also at the same level, without going outside, without dealing with the sloping ground or needing to use an elevator or set of stairs. There's a playground with outdoor play equipment open to the sky here adjacent to the preschool program. So that's kind of what's happening here on the during the morning. In the afternoon, it kind of reverses. There's the back of the school is also made use for buses to stack up along with the front because of the number of buses that arrive all at once in the afternoon. But again, the parents still have access to queue up along the west side of the school to pick up their students and come and go. The driveway is 2-way, depending on which way they're headed after they're picking up their students. So that's kind of the exterior of the building at the top of the hill. And so just to give you an overall view of it, here's how it sits. The existing school is down here to the right. The athletic fields and parking area will be down there. There is that connecting path that we'll talk about, and you can see the new driveway coming in from Farm Street, accessing the school and making a connection to Hemlock Road at the current guard shack there. And just to give you a feel for the building, as you come in from Farm Street, this is the main school entrance. This rounded portion of the building is the administration area on the ground floor. So there's good welcoming and supervision there for visitors. The cafeteria is at this level at grade. It has an outdoor patio, again, at the same grade as the cafeteria. And then along the front of the building, there's the bus drop off. The multiple entrances along the front. It is essentially a 4-story building at this level. And at the far end is the what we call the events entrance, where the gym and the auditorium are located. And the customer access is in the center of this side of the building here. And this is the path and stairs, and we have more detail, more up-to-date drawings of the lower level of the building as it steps down the hill to accommodate the grade change in the hillside. And then to talk about the inside of the building, first of all, it's best to say that the entire school is fully accessible and to the greatest extent possible, universally accessible. So as we mentioned, this plan is oriented the same way that site plan was. So the main school entrance is here on the left by the rounded portion of the administration building. There are 3 access points across the front of the building, all of them accessible and related to parking. The center one being that customer entrance for the public that can come directly to the restaurant or directly to the cosmetology salon. The assembly areas are at the right-hand end of the building, the auditorium and gym with a dedicated lobby, a dedicated elevator at this end of the building. And diagonally opposite, there's another elevator. So there are 2 elevators in the building that travel to all the levels and carry through each of the upper floors. And as we mentioned, at the rear of the building is that dedicated preschool entrance, and their preschool program is located immediately adjacent to that point, and the playground is adjacent. The building is organized. One of the goals of the project was to cluster the career shop areas together. So all of the construction trades are on this floor. And again, every level of the building is basically flat. There are no internal ramps in the building. And each of these large shops all have overhead doors that can accept deliveries, and they're at grade as well. As we mentioned, the cafeteria is at the left-hand end of the plan here, and the gym and auditorium are at the right-hand end. Going up one level here, again, the building now takes the sort of configuration of a courtyard here, with getting daylight into the center of the building. But again, the career tech areas are clustered together in blue, and the academic science and academic classrooms are in green here, wrapping around the other three sides of the courtyard in close proximity to the career tech areas. Again, the elevators are highlighted there. You can see them at either end. There are boys and girls and gender neutral toilet facilities on every floor. Every one of them is fully handicapped accessible. Every shop individually has a unisex, gender neutral bathroom facility as well. Again, fully accessible there. Teachers' facilities are located in the teacher planning area on each floor. And every bathroom, every toilet room, shower area in the school is accessible. It's not that they're segregated and separated. Much like the superintendent talked about the academic classrooms, the same philosophy applies to, accommodations within the building as well. One of the other unique features of the school is this multi-purpose auditorium. I'll show you an image in a second, but as opposed to a traditional auditorium that has like stadium seating, this actually has a flat floor on the first floor and a flat balcony on the second floor. So both levels are fully accessible. And then the seating itself is retractable. So it has a multi-purpose aspect to it. I'll share an image in a moment there. Here's the gym. You can see it at this level, accessed by elevator and stair, directly above the locker rooms below. And then the upper two floors of this are very similar, you can see, just with different career clusters on each floor. Here's that the health services cluster with that new biotech shop. And on the top is the balance of the career tech shops, the superintendent's office, and the balance of the classrooms wrapping around that courtyard. And here's the lower level plan. As the building steps down the hill, as we said, there is the opportunity to have this lower level, which is, it's sort of built into the hillside on the uphill side, but is totally out of the ground on the other three sides with full access at grade. So both for pedestrians and for vehicles accessing these shops. This is the auto shop and auto body shop are at this level. And this is the connecting point for students from the locker rooms going up and down the pathway to the lower level hillside, lower level parking and athletic fields. So this is, if you were to cut a section through the building, helps explain what I was just talking about, that it's basically a 4-story building with the cafeteria at one end, the auditorium and gym at the other end, and then the building does step down that one level at the other end there. And there is a courtyard for the upper 3 floors to get light into all those classrooms as well. And there are 2 elevators, as we mentioned, one at either end of the building. This is that multi-purpose auditorium with the retractable seats. This is a precedent photo here, but it shows that there's a flat floor, again, fully accessible, and then a balcony, which is also level and flat accessible, so that the space can be used in a traditional sort of auditorium when it's pulled out, when the seats are pulled out, but it can also be used when the seats are retracted, for other events like robotics competitions science fairs, career fairs. But again, the balcony is flat with handicap seating available at both levels. And in every shop, this is just a sample, but we've detailed the layout and equipment and furniture of every shop at this point, and made, special care, as we said, that every shop has a dedicated unisex toilet room that is accessible, and all of the furniture is accessible as well. We make sure the counters are at the right height and have knee space under them, that lockers, that there's always a locker mounted at the right height, and so forth throughout the site. And this is just the drafting and design, but we've done these kind of projections and layouts for every of the 19 career shop areas. And again, made sure that they are fully accessible throughout. So that's sort of the inside of the building. And of course, we did have to deal with this grade change in the site that the property that the school owned, and making a connection from the lower level fields and parking to the building itself. As we said, of course, there is, significant amount of accessible parking around the building for those who need it and use it. But we did need to think about the connection from the building to the lower level in an accessible fashion. And just to help you do the math and understand the hillside for those who maybe haven't visited the site, the current elevation of the student parking lot is about 84, elevation 84, and the level of the building that we need to connect to is about 143. So it is about a 59-foot grade change there. And so we'd like to explain, the series of ramps and stairs that are proposed to get us there. And there is an alternate in the program of a satellite locker room with an elevator that may well accomplish the first 11 or 12 feet of that height difference, but the stairs and ramps are the majority of the path connecting the balance of it. And I'd like to have our landscape architect, David Warner, kind of explain the details and the precedents to this.
Thank you, Carl. This is David Warner, principal at Warner Larson Landscape Architects. That section of driveway between the upper and lower campus is approaching about a 10% gradient. And so the pathway through the woods has a twofold purpose, and that is to actually make it fully accessible, of course. Fundamentally, that's the bottom line. A pathway along the sidewalk would be in excess of the 5% gradient, maximum gradient allowed by code. The second reason why we wove this pathway through the woods, and I want to show you examples of that as we go through the next couple of slides, is to preserve as much of that forest on the slope as possible. So what this design is, everything along this pathway is elevated. So we've got a substructure of like a galvanized steel framework, and then a decking system for longevity and durability is this nice slip-resistant composite decking material. And, we've got guardrails around the edges with handrails for code-compliant ramps. And then we also have stairs with similar guards and railings associated with them. But it's done in such a way that it allows the students to have this daily experience of going from the parking to the school and back, of walking through the woods. In fact, we see this as a tremendous opportunity to help to actually provide an accessible route into the forest for educational purposes as well. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the dimensional questions that were brought up by the town engineer, Bill Renault. And we have those questions here specifically. What is the length of the stairs and the number of steps and the width? So as far as the widths are concerned, all of these ramp segments and stairs are designed at 8 feet wide. And they have, like I said, guards and railings on both sides. There will be places along this pathway that are less than 30 inches off of the ground surface. And so in those situations, we are going to be having just this low curb rail, fully compliant and safe. But as far as the number of steps are concerned, well, let me just explain that for those of you who have maybe seen plans that have been circulated through the Conservation Commission permitting process or other public representations of the plan, you'll probably notice that this is a little bit of a different configuration. I just wanted to point out that as Superintendent DeBerry was saying, the advisory group that he's been talking to, we've met with them on multiple occasions and have really put into thought as far as how best to provide a more inclusive experience between the upper and lower campus. And the reason, so the first design that you've seen circulated was taking the principle of trying to make the shortest connection for people who can climb stairs, and then providing a fully accessible route in conjunction with that, where the people are arriving at and getting to the same point at the very top and the very bottom. But what that was missing was the more inclusive experience of people sharing a common path of travel as much as possible. So if you see down at number 1, starting up from the student parking lot, you're actually first turning onto a ramp. Everybody walks up that first segment of ramp. And then there's a couple of sets of stairs that shortcut the first few ramps, but then everybody walks up the next ramp. There's a stair that shortcuts the next one, and then 2 more ramps that everybody walks up. And so we actually have, in this new design, 9 ramps along this path that are common along this path of travel. And I think that's a really important thing that we've taken to heart in these meetings that we've had. And I hope that those of you listening tonight see this as an improvement over the plan that you may have seen previously. One of the other real good advantages of this is that it has fewer stairs and shorter runs of stairs. So we have, originally there were 102 stairs between the top and the bottom of campus, and now there are 60. And those stair runs now are grouped in series of 5 or 9 steps at a time, when previously we were showing stair runs of 10 or 12. So there's more opportunities for rest, and there's a less strenuous way for people to get up and down that 59-foot grade change that Carl was talking about. And then as far as the linear footage, the overall linear footage of this path of travel, so there's there are 24 ramps in total that are 30 feet in length. So that's 720 feet of ramping system. But I think to really understand this, you want to factor in the landings as well, right? So the total linear footage of ramps with the landings and the common path of travel getting from the student parking lot to the building is about 1,100 feet. And when you take the stairs, you're going about 800 feet. So about 70% of the overall path of travel for someone in a wheelchair is when people walk up the stairs, they're using about 70% of that same distance, which I think is really remarkable in terms of, where we were before and what we're showing now. There was even discussion about possibly eliminating the stairs, where number 2 is pointing to, but really we felt that the stairs in that location are serving a couple of different purposes. They are providing that shortcut, if you will, for people who can climb stairs, but they're also connecting to this node at the upper part of the stairs, which is where the natural trail that exists there today will intersect with that at the existing grade. So that's a point where students coming up from below or coming from the building can actually get out onto that natural trail system that's currently in existence. So let's see, as far as the precedent images, I know we flipped through those fairly quickly. Let's just look at thank you, Carl. This one on the left is a really good representation of the details of what we're talking about. Of course, we'll have the double handrails, the lower and the upper, for code compliance, but we're looking at this galvanized mesh and wood frame with a composite decking and an 8-foot wide travelway that the school is also getting maintenance equipment that the boardwalk system is designed to support, that will be able to keep the pathway clear of snow during inclement weather. So I just wanted to focus on that. Now, if we can go to the 3D visuals.
Oops, you want to point out where they're taken from, David?
Oh, thank you. Yes. So the first view from down below is going to show you the ramping system and stair system between the student parking lot and the driveway. And that is an area that is going to be regraded as a result of, I mean, it's currently, most of that area is already currently developed as the school parking lot. And we're going to be filling that and regrading that. So you're going to see that those stairs and ramps sit pretty closely on the ground. And then number 2 is taken at the intersection of the ramp system with the stair. So you'd be able to see how that's integrated within the woodland. And then number 3 is really getting kind of an overall perspective back at the ramp system from where it does the turn and heads back up to the school. Thanks, Carl. So starting at number 1, from below, you can see how this ramp system and stair system is sitting pretty much right on grade. And then where it gets up to the driveway is up at the, just right about there. Yep, right there. So here is the intersection on the upper ramp and stair system where you can see the stair intersecting with the ramp system. And the reason why we developed these 3D visuals to a much higher resolution was I think there was this perception that there might be a shorter route to go. And, there's that 59 feet of elevation change, and we're maxing it out with ramps that are fully code compliant. But there's no shorter way, trust me, to be able to get from the student parking lot to the building. And one of the other prerequisites that I mentioned at the beginning is that this is all elevated above grade. So if you were to put a ramp system down on the ground and switch back on itself, you're still going to have the same number of ramps between the lower campus and the upper campus, and you're going to have a lot more destruction. You're going to have to take out a bunch of trees and blast rock to get ramping in an area where the ground is rising up more quickly than the natural path of travel. So this is laid out as the natural path of travel for that purpose, to be elevated above the ground like those precedent images you saw previously. Now, lastly, from this angle, what you're hopefully able to see is where the lower ramp system and the upper ramp system meet, and then come up to a turning point that switches around and heads back up to the school. It's interesting, on a steep piece of topography, when you put code compliant ramps at 8%, 8.33 is the maximum, but we generally design for 8 or slightly below 8% to build in tolerance. The ramps don't really appear all that steep. We've put plenty of landings and resting spots along the way, so people can take it more leisurely. And the stairs themselves, like I said, also are broken up into shorter sets of stairs. So I think with this, from this view, it's pretty clear from that crosswalk that if you were to try to go from where the crosswalk is straight up to the building, it would be extremely steep. It would be somewhere 15 or 20% in gradient. And we have to make sure that the ramps are less than 1 in 12. So this is why the pathway follows the lay of the land, as you can see in this image.
Thanks, David. Just one last bit that we wanted to share with you to sort of put things in some kind of context is we found some other high schools, we're aware of them previously, and kind of summarize them here to compare with that 59 feet of grade change that we need to deal with from our building to, in essence, what is a common level of playing fields and parking areas. Here are some of you may be familiar with these. North Reading High School recently, opened a new high school. Their athletic fields are about 70 feet below the access point on the school. Somerville just built a new high school on a hill. You can see the switchbacks and stairs that they had to deal with, about 55 feet to get from this, public sidewalk to that entrance point of the school. one that I'm very familiar with. My children went to school here in Needham. The student parking lot in the main varsity field is 45 feet below the level of the gym in the high school here. Again, with a student parking lot below and a teacher's parking lot up above. Very similar to the Northeast Metro Tech. And then right down Hemlock Road, Wakefield High School, their football field sits about 58 feet above their field house, the locker rooms there. Between the sidewalk and the switchback at the upper parking lot, it's a total of 58 vertical feet. Another school in Somerville, this one happens to be an elementary school, but just a connection between a public sidewalk and the school, 30 feet vertically. Out in the central part of the state, as you get towards Worcester, it's even hillier. This is David Prouty High School in Spencer. The level of the high school, including the gym, is about 70 feet below this track and football field, and 110 feet below their upper field there. And in Holden, Mass, Wachusett Regional has several terraces of fields, all of which are well above their high school and the access point on the building itself to the gym, ranging from 20 to 66 feet, these three different terraces to their athletic fields. And then sort of the one many people might be familiar with is a college facility, obviously Holy Cross in Worcester. Their gym and upper athletic fields are 240 feet above their lower athletic fields. And of course, it's a different client, a different student body and age group, we understand, but just to put things into context, we wanted to share that with you. So thank you very much for all that. We're happy to take your questions. We did want to just mention the schedule of the project to let people know where we are. We are almost approaching 90% construction documents. You can see May 2023. We are actually looking to start construction as early as possible in the spring here or early summer. We'll be 100% complete with construction documents by the end of June and bidding the project in July. But we are bidding early packages of site and structure right now, anxious to create this new high school for 1,600 students. And the rest of the construction schedule will take several years, as you might imagine, for a project of this magnitude, with an opening somewhere maybe mid-year, January 2026. So thanks very much. We're happy to take questions now, Marie. I appreciate your time and patience.
If people would, raise your hand, and while you're doing that, I'm going to first and say, when I was looking at the boardwalk from the main parking lot, the first thing that struck me is, okay, I want to take a night class there. And it's 10 o'clock when I come out of the building. And what kind of lighting is there going to be that lights that path? And what kind of, are there going to be security cameras there?
Yes, to both those. But first of all, if you are taking a night course, most likely you're going to park by the school itself. There's, something like 250 parking spaces by the building itself, including, as we said, 20 handicap spaces by the building. But in the event that, let's say it's a student football game or practice rather, and it's going late and it gets darker, the path is lit and the path will have security cameras as well.
And will students have an opportunity if they want some kind of escort to the parking lot, especially the young ladies?
That's a good suggestion. I'm sure the administration will take that into account. That is a possibility. As you see on some college campuses too, they do have remote phones for things like that as well. That's another possibility that the school could consider. Thanks for making
Kevin,
that suggestion.
I will jump in. we do have security on staff for our night school, and it will be expanded when the new school is built. And they do things like stay in the areas where they know people are traveling at night. So we currently do that, and we'll absolutely expand that to make sure that it's always safe for our students.
And would you have staff out there and I don't know, that's a long walk, and you got high school kids who do not make good decisions, and they're doing stupid stuff. And
well, I can tell you, fortunately,
confrontations happen, and there's no eyes there.
Yep. So currently the parking to get to the end of our parking is actually further than it would be now. We've been able to have great security. We have cameras throughout the building. So we would do our best, and we would have staffing. But yeah, security is always going to be a challenge. And I know every institution, every building goes through this when it comes to parking. So we are on it. We are a very security conscious building and district. So I do appreciate you bringing that up, and that will be a focus.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go. Someone is their video says Zoom user. I don't know who that is, but if you would please state your name and the town you're from and ask your question.
You need to unmute yourself.
I can unmute.
Hello. I just want to let you know, my name is Judy Bushy. I am from Melrose, and I was born with spastic diplegic cerebral palsy. I currently use forearm crutches to walk. And the whole school looks wonderful. It's just the length of your ramps are long, and I used to carry a 20 to 25 pound backpack on my back. And I do know that you mentioned stairs. Is that going to decrease the length of your ramp so that somebody can climb the stairs and decrease the length? Because if the ramps, because they look lengthy, and I know from my end to get to the door would be a lengthy process for me. And by the time I got there, I would be exhausted.
Yeah, great question. Really keeping things in perspective is the amount of handicap spots that we have throughout the building. So if you had challenges getting to the upper level, you would be able to park at the upper level. So there wouldn't be a need for you to have to take any ramp or stairs if they were challenging. But I would also answer for Carl that yes, we did integrate stairs within the ramping system, that it would shorten your trip up if you decided for whatever reason you didn't want to use one of the handicap parking spaces adjacent to the building.
Okay, well, I would definitely use the handicap space. It's just, I was wondering about the length. And I want to also, I am very familiar with the Northeast Vocational School. I have nephews that have gone through it and have done really well. But I notice your elevators are on opposite sides of your building. Is that because of offsetting weeks? Is that why you do that?
No, Kyle, you can answer that. It's about proximity to the different resources for students who need the elevator. But Kyle, can you expand on that
Exactly.
a little bit?
We're trying to sort of be strategic about where the elevators are located to best serve students on a day-to-day basis. You're right, though, that half the students are in shops and half the students are in academics. But that's the way the building is somewhat laid out with the career tech areas on one side of the building and the academic classrooms wrapping around the other three sides of the courtyard. But both elevators, serve both, populations equally. We're just trying to have them in proximity to where the boys and girls rooms are, where the, administration areas are, where the locker rooms are, so we're thinking of all the different program areas and trying to locate those elevators, strategically in the building, diagonally opposite corners.
what if one of the elevators happens to have an issue and is not available?
Yeah, that's one reason to have two. Is for redundancy and for backup. But of course,
Okay.
you know, the school, when new schools are built these days, the elevators do come with service contracts, and generally you can mandate that, you know, response times can be, you know,
Okay.
within 24 hours so that you don't have long outages like that.
And if there's an issue with the ramp, as far as it's made with Fibron decking, with exposure to the weather, if one of those boards were to come up due to weather conditions and expansion and contraction, you know, could that be fixed? Is that something that's, you know, would be able to be fixed in a timely manner, or is it something that you'd have to wait a while to do?
Well, certainly.
So we have Kyle, let me jump in. We have
Go ahead,
a
David.
maintenance and custodial staff that is top notch. That includes licensed carpenters, electricians, plumbers. We run our maintenance department 24 hours per day. So I call them Santa's elves because, you know, you leave at 7 o'clock at night and you come in and everything's fixed or everything's painted. It's amazing. But
Excellent.
we do pride ourselves with maintenance.
Thank you
should
very
mention
much.
too. Thank you, Julia. I maybe didn't mention that the construction of that boardwalk is not quite like your back, you know, porch deck. It has a steel understructure with
Okay.
those boards on top of it. So it is built to a, you know, commercial sort of industrial standard.
Excellent. I have one more question, and I'll leave it at that. With
These are
your
great.
athletic fields, thank you very much. With your athletic fields, with those with disabilities, are they accessible, or, you know, do they have seating, or would they have difficulty getting onto the field so they could, you know, watch? I know you may not be.
Yeah.
And by the way, I just want to say one thing. You including a disabled group of sporting events or groups that people can join in, I think that's wonderful. I am not going to give you my age, but I truly wish that when I was younger, they had such a thing, because I love sports and I would love to be a part of it. So I think that's wonderful.
Great. And and actually, I was going to probably ask at the end if Bill would be allowed to share me some of the contacts of the local disability commissions. Like I said, we're probably to get a league going. We don't have, you know, full teams right now at Northeast, so we're going to try to bring in some of the local high schools, and I think the disability commissions would be a huge help for that.
Absolutely.
And to back up to your first question, that all of the fields will be handicap accessible, and that they will all have seating. So one of the things we were looking to do initially, and that's why I love this question, is we have a great set of stands in our football field that can hold about 1,000 people. And we had addressed the architects and engineers, hey, maybe we can take the stands that we have now and save a lot of money and repurpose them. And the answer was no, because they have to be handicapped accessible. And I said, enough said. Looking forward to some handicap accessible seating, especially for events like graduation.
Yes.
That we have a lot of people who come in with accessibility issues.
Like I say to you, I have four nephews that graduated, and I can't say enough about the school and its academic programs, and, you know, the workshops and everything. Getting up the bleachers to go to the graduations were a trek. That was a trek, but I did it, and it sounds like the new building sounds like it's very well thought out as far as being accessible for those with disabilities. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, Tim Donovan.
Yes, Tim Donovan, Woburn. Just had a couple items noticed in other buildings that, you know, were designed ADA accessible, and then when the real project is done, you do notice some possible oversights that were, you know, not, I guess, seen or not placed correctly. And I guess maybe these are for note to the final product of the builders. would be things like the soap dispensers and faucets, whether they be in the bathrooms, they're reachable. Sometimes you see soap dispensers that are above the counter and, you know, getting close enough and reaching to reach those when they're beyond the counter or behind the sink area is very difficult. So placement of those is critical, and the ability to actually roll under the sinks and use the faucets not only in the bathrooms, but in any of the classrooms that have use of faucets and soap dispensers and towel dispensers as such. Another area is you commonly see, I believe your bathrooms the proposed school bathrooms have just walk-in entryways with no doors, which is great. Sometimes what you see in other areas that do have doors, barrels are placed right as you exit the restrooms, and they're usually right beside the doorway, which prevents someone with mobility issues, whether a walker or a wheelchair, from easily accessing the door handle to open and close the door. Another common area of the barrel planter obstruction is you commonly like to see them placed right in front of the elevator, right where the button is, right in between the elevator stalls. So another area just of concern, if these things could be noted to make sure that they aren't kept out of the final construction of the building. And of course, the other thing too is you might have classrooms that have drawers, that those handles are made accessible for people that have hand and function issues. And I guess my last question is, how many of those accessible spaces in the upper parking lot have 8-foot unloading zones?
Yep. So let me answer the first couple, or comment on the first couple of your comments, and then Kyle, if you can answer that last one when I'm done, be great. Tim, I think, did we meet at the Woburn disability meeting? Yeah. And I've got to tell you, you actually asked the question if students, why can't all students use the ramp? And it was your question that I brought back to the team and said, hey, can this happen? And that's really what led to the conversation about integrating the stairs. So, you know, in case you ever think your comments land on deaf ears, that one definitely didn't. So one of the members of our team, she's a parent of a student who is in a wheelchair, is part of our advisory team. And she's an advocate for students and for people in wheelchairs. And one of the things she brought to the first meeting that you had mentioned some examples of was universal design. And when she came in, the first thing she said was, this isn't about marking off check boxes for ADA compliance. That doesn't make a disability or handicapped friendly school. We want to talk about universal design. And she listed off all of the things that you had just mentioned and gave phenomenal examples of those things. So I think that's a piece that I think, you know, future school projects should really look closer at. And you love your input, but we are looking at every corner a student takes, every office they might have to go into. That's something that people don't consider a lot of times. We spent about an hour just talking about the bathrooms and using the exact examples that you had used. So we're still working on when we're just at 90%. We're talking about, the big picture stuff right now, but there are going to be many meetings, and I'd love to talk to you or any of the team in the future about some of these more intricate issues that people deal with day to day. Kyle, can you answer I can't answer the parking space question.
I think our landscape architect, David Warner, can answer that, Dave.
Yes, I can. So there are 5 accessible parking spaces on the upper campus that are adjacent to an 8-foot wide access aisle. There are 3 striped out areas with the 8-foot wide access aisle. 2 of them have an accessible parking space on both sides, and one of them has an accessible parking space on one side. So that's why you come up with 5.
Thanks, David.
And what about the lower parking lot?
Take a quick look at the plan to answer this.
There's one in Breakheart, right?
Yes. So there's one 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 in the lower parking lot.
7 with the 8-foot unloading zones?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mhm.
As I guess that, just to follow up, obviously the the guidance we commonly refer to, and you probably have too, is the 521 CMR, Massachusetts Architectural Access Board.
Sure. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Next question is David Hoff.
So thank you. So I'm David Hoff from Melrose. So it's really a statement, not really a question, but I appreciate first off the time spent going over the plans and the design, and obviously how the whole design will be fully accessible for people with disabilities, which is great, but it's also required by the law. This is not like it's the ADA requires that everything be fully accessible. What's not clear to me, and I appreciate the showing the other examples of buildings and of parking and the buildings at different elevations, but it's not clear to me why you have created this design which requires this very long ramp for people when there were alternatives at that site. Maybe some of those other examples you gave, maybe they were on such tight pieces of land that you couldn't do anything else. But it's very clear from the site, and in fact, that there was various proposals for a design that would have been not required these multiple elevations and such a long ramp way to get into the building. So I just again remain, frankly, as an advocate for people with disabilities and as a taxpayer, I still wonder why this design is going forward when there was clearly better alternatives.
Okay, so the site is built on 3 different elevations. So we have a lower field, we have where the school is now, and we have an upper football field. So no matter where we built, we were always going to be on some elevation issue. People either were going to have to go up or down to get to a field. This was the only option as far as where the school could go, regardless of, I don't know exactly where you got your information, but this was the place the school had to go. We've gone back and forth with various people, but I can tell you I've worked with a team of engineers and architects for years on this. So this location, with that said, was where it was going. So when we looked at the ramp and we looked at options, okay, so we looked at your typical zigzag ramp, okay, and we calculated the amount of feet. So we met with students in wheelchairs and parents and said, what's a better situation, to go a total of 700 feet back and forth on a concrete ramp that's narrow, or going 700 total feet, and I'm just using that as an example, I don't know the exact number, on a ramp with your peers? And overwhelmingly, their recommendation was, well, it's the same distance. Okay, but instead of going back and forth on a narrow concrete ramp that you'll probably be alone, or maybe you might have one friend that joined you, they would rather be with their classmates on a ramp, and the way that we designed it. And that's really how we came up with that answer.
Okay, but why, but again, you're not answering the question, which is why, when there was clearly, as this was proposed, please let me ask the question. When this was proposed, it was very clear there was a number of proposals to have it not at this elevation. Why are you saying this is the only possible option?
Because it is. So it was never clear, I don't know where you would get that from, that this school would be appropriate in any other setting than the one it is now. And if it was appropriate, we would still be dealing with the same elevation issues, but it's not. This is where a school for 1,600 students, that's a vocational school, would fit. It would not fit in the other places, or there would have been bigger environmental impacts that would have kept us from putting it somewhere else. I mean, if you want to sit down with one of our engineers or architects and have a conversation, I'd love it. But there is a lot of misinformation going around about the school, and that is probably the biggest. And it's sad that that affects the Disability Commission. But that's the reality of it.
You know, we could
There's
sit
no
here and
reason
argue it.
I would want to put a school.
You know, I've researched this topic. There was alternatives to this, but I'm not going to debate it. So thank you.
Well, you know, like I said, I worked with a team of engineers and architects for 2 years. There is no reason why I would want to build a school when there was a better option in another place. There is no reason. So I understand we hear things and we get anecdotal information. I've been there. But when the engineers and the architects did a full feasibility study and looked at all of the areas, this was where the school had to be built.
Thank you, Mr. Barry. I'm going to go on to the next person. Erin Ryan Heineman.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm from the Melrose Commission on Disabilities. As I mentioned before, I am disabled. I have multiple sclerosis and I have motor impairment because of that. And so I use a cane most of the time. But I was a public school teacher up until 2020 when I became disabled. So I have like a lot of experience with high school student. I was a high school teacher. So I want to say like, so the number one, like first, I want to just ask a quick question, which is like, the ramps do like, so the visual of the ramps, like the picture of the ramps, they in the woods is beautiful. But however, like they look like kind of like these long stretches without an off space. You know what I mean? Like it felt a little confined to me.
Right.
So is there a way, like, I mean, because is there a way for a person to like get off of that space if they feel like in danger or something? You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Great comment. Carl, do you want to respond to that?
There is, I can't pinpoint it exactly on the plan, but some of the landings, because of the way it sits at the ground, that we don't have to, have continuous guardrails there. And so there will be openings in those sidewalls. It's not, continuously up in the air, particularly at the spot where the boardwalk intersects with the existing trail through the woods that's there now. It's a natural kind of node where we'll be right, maybe 6 inches above grade at that point and can make a connection down to the trail there. So there will be spots that are open and you can get off. We thought of that as well.
Okay, thank you for answering that. So the other, so first I'll just say, Superintendent Barry, thank you so much for mentioning disability as diversity, because so many times we are left out of the conversation with diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's like inclusion of people with disabilities is frequently left out. And I'm also a huge fan of co-teaching. I've done it myself. And so one of the questions that I have is like, when I was teaching, I taught for 13 years up to 2020. And so 2020 was a difficult year for me. Obviously, I became disabled at that year, but like I taught up until the spring. I was not disabled then. And I experienced firsthand the mental health crisis that is happening in the state of Massachusetts, as well as the entire country. But I mean, I had not experienced that as a teacher before, and it was shocking. And I'm sure that you're experiencing it as well. And so I'm thinking that like, you mentioned a lot of students that, like you mentioned emotional disabilities, and depression, anxiety, ADHD, autism spectrum, all of those things. If I'm a student with ADHD and in school, I don't know how early your school starts, but let's say like school starts early usually for high school. And I am expected to be in school at 8 a.m. And I'm thinking about going up that ramp. It's like almost like a hindrance, just like to think about it, right? To going up the whole, like, so I'm just saying with the sort of mental health crisis that you might find, I just want to say as a comment, you might find a lot of reasonable accommodations coming from students to be dropped off at a different place or be late to school. And I think that you should bake those things into your policies probably of attendance and things like that, because an attendance policy that's like very stringent is going to be completely against inclusion in that sense.
Great comment. Can I jump in and then we'll get back to this because it's fresh in my mind?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You know, and the other piece is if you have free time, I'd always welcome you to our advisory meetings. I'd be more than happy to have you Zoom on there or whatever, you know, is good for you. So, you know, one of the first lessons we learned from our parent who has a student on in a wheelchair is that many schools think that allowing a student to leave 5 minutes early from class and, you know, getting to a class maybe 5 minutes late is a fine policy because they're able to maneuver the building and the classes aren't going back and forth. What she reminded us though is the effects that has on a student's education. And as you know, as a teacher, the first 5 minutes of a class and the last 5 minutes of a class are probably the most important part of the lesson. So the current policy of saying, well, you know, we know you broke your leg and we know you're in a wheelchair. You can just leave 5 minutes early and, you know, if you're late for your next class, you know, we'll give you a pass and you're all set. So what you're bringing up is really connected to that. Our special ed and guidance department work very close with individuals. So we make hundreds of reasonable accommodations that aren't part of the policy. So if you were a parent, you called up and said exactly what you said, I would say, well, we still have 200 parking spots on the upper level. We still have other options that we would try to work out some, you know, system for that to not happen. The other important piece to understand is the majority of our students still get bused and they would be bused right up to the top level. So it would only mostly be our seniors who might be in a situation like that, but that would be a very easy accommodation for us to make. And that's something that we think makes us a friendly school for disabilities. And again, helping somebody who has that situation isn't about checking an ADA box. So I think that's kind of what we do best.
Okay. And then my last question, I'm sorry, I know there's a lot of people with questions, but the last question I heard there's a lot of percentages of what types of disabilities, right? But do you know how many motor disabilities are, because I have a motor disability. I was diagnosed actually while I was in high school, but I didn't have the motor impairment then, but all the same. But one of my best friends was a little person. I'm thinking about little persons. I'm thinking about cerebral palsy. Thinking about, you said neurological, and mine is neurological and motor. So I'm wondering about that.
So that was, you know, and I'll take that. Reviewing these before the meeting with my special ed director, that's the exact question I asked her. So the majority of the, you know, the students you're talking about fall under the neurological. It's not 100% of the 9%, but it is the majority. So we did graduate a couple of years ago, a little person. We do have students with, you know, spina bifida, actually a staff member, cerebral palsy and such. So these are people that we've done a really good job accommodating despite a building that is so unaccommodating. But that, you're exactly right. That's the majority of that particular subcategory.
One more English teacher thing. You have such a beautiful space. You should build a spot where in the woods where you can have a class.
I love it.
Class can be taught outside.
That's it. I love it. Did you hear that, architects? We definitely agree with that.
We agree.
Next is Julie.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name's Julie Scott. I'm from Wakefield, former teacher. My family I have graduates from the school. It's a wonderful school. I've sent a student there from many of the different communities with which I've taught. My brother worked there as a safety professional for a number of years. He's a former Saugus police officer. He and a number of his friends do not recommend the female members of my family walking alone in Breakheart. So I would like to address the ramp and the stair access. As a former teacher, I have had so much training with the ALICE active shooter protocols. And I look at that ramp and the stairs, and I look at the lack of a line of vision where a female and a male would feel that they can't be seen and they cannot see. And it's not just at night, it's during the day as well. There are lots of corners and twists and turns. If that is not maintained and kept free of ice, similar to the weather we had this weekend, or free of leaves, you could be moving quickly, you could fall. The trees block visibility.
There are lots of areas of obstructed view. I'm concerned I didn't hear anything in regard to handicapped access and active shooter access. How would you exit? I'm assuming from my training that you would want to be as far away from the school as possible. So when I looked, I'm so thrilled that there are 2 access roads into the school. That was a huge flaw with the previous design. But where do you go when you have the Alice drills? And I'm assuming you're going to have 2 or 3 options. That ramp terrifies me, absolutely terrifies me in an active shooter situation. It also gives them a place to go. And you're surrounded by forests, lots of ways for people to get in there unseen. I need to hear about safety, and not just from a female point of view, just for our students. We're sending our children here, and we're sending our family members here to work.
Right. Great points. I mean, the most important point you mentioned is currently we have only one access point. Secondly, we are completely surrounded currently with the situation that you're talking about. If you walk out our front door and look in any direction, we are surrounded by areas that concern us. And, part of living in New England is how we're going to deal with this. And we have yet to really dig in deep. We do have a security consultant we have met to discuss things like cameras. We haven't yet gotten into the specifics of the Alice drill, but there are a lot of great consultants out there, and we're going to do our best to work on a plan exactly for what you mentioned. But I think, most demographics, unfortunately, in these areas that have some challenges. And you're right, we are going to have to really dig deep and come up with the best plan. We work very closely with the chief of police in Wakefield. In fact, active shooter drills for the town of Wakefield are currently done at Northeast. So we volunteered our school and our whole campus for the Wakefield police to practice all active shooter drills, not just active shooter drills at Northeast. But it is something we are going to put a lot of time into and do the best we can.
I'm well aware of the training, and you're missing my point. And sometimes I'm not clear enough. I'm specifically concerned about those ramps. I know, because I'm trained in it, where I would take my students, and I know where I would encourage students to go. There are too many trees, and you need to be able to see and be seen. And one of the selling points at the beginning of tonight's presentation was how we're offering children a walk in the woods. That's wrong. Safety should come first. A lot of those trees need to go.
Okay, so I hope the tree people didn't hear that.
Well, you can, no, don't criticize.
Let me jump in though. If I can jump in.
Do not put
I can answer the
safety.
question.
Don't mock my concerns about safety. There are other ways to include nature in this.
Right.
But we need to be able to see. I need to finish my question, because there is not one safety person in attendance at this meeting. So, and I'm concerned about that as well. This should actually be like at the top of the list of what we're talking about. And I don't know why there is no safety professional at this meeting.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, this is Kevin. Can I just jump in, please? Safety, the Alice training and things of that nature is not something we typically talk about in an open meeting, as we don't want to advertise exactly how things would occur to someone that has a nefarious, intent out there listening. This is a committee on disability that we're answering all your questions that we can, and we would ask respectfully that that type of question on safety be deferred to the user group that's responsible, which would be the administration working with the Wakefield Police Department, of which we've already had 2 meetings with, and we are going to continue our dialogue with them to make the school as safe as possible.
Well, it also, we would be having handicapped issues if we're exiting using these ramps. It's a handicapped issue as well. There might be other ways that we would need to think about removing people from the building area, because I didn't see a lot of other ways.
We agree, Madam Chair, and we'd appreciate if we could work that out. with our safety consultants and the Wakefield Police Department and the administration. Thank you.
Thanks,
Just so you know,
Julie. I'm just gonna, sorry to interrupt you, but we have other people that would like to ask questions and it's getting late, so if you don't
Okay,
mind,
I
I'm
hope
gonna
there's
move
another
to the
public-
next person.
would love to have another public forum just on the safety issues, and that would affect everyone, handicapped and otherwise. Thank you.
Okay, Bill, take note of that. Thank you. Bob is next.
Bob Brooks, June Circle, and I am a butter to this project. I do have a few questions there. They should be fairly brief, and hopefully the answers are brief too. This one is to Superintendent DeBarry. We had a conversation back in the fall of 2021 that the upper parking lot would be for staff and teachers only. And I see that with this new plan I'm looking at tonight, it's the parking has increased substantially with the new drawings. I understand that there's a lot of handicap spots up there, which I approve of. I believe there should be maybe more, but the question is, will the students, I guess the seniors have most of the cars, or some of the juniors, will they still be parking down on the lower spot? Is that my assumption correct?
Yep.
Is there any reason why they would park up in the upper campus?
I don't know, maybe like I had mentioned earlier to one of the speakers, there could be an accommodation issue just because somebody, doesn't have a handicap placard. Doesn't mean that there may time to time be issues where it may benefit somebody to park up top.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. It's just a simple one. My second question is, can we bring the slide up? Carl, can we bring the slide up that shows the whole school with the parking rotation that you had up earlier? I think that should do it. Okay. Yeah, that should work. Now I see how the parking is. I'm looking specifically at the back of the school where it says bus pickup. Now the new 650-foot slope wall that's in the back there, and the 12-foot ditch. There's approximately an elevation of 35 feet going perpendicular with the road, correct?
Vertically, you mean 35 feet high? Yes.
35 feet high, but the ditch is actually parallel with the road, correct?
Correct.
Okay. In the SCARTEP report, it specifically says that additionally a fence and barrier structure like a guardrail or rock rail should be installed and maintained along the outboard side of a catchment ditch. Will there be one there?
Yes.
Okay. It also mentioned down the bottom, vehicles should not be parked up against the slope or directly adjacent to the proposed catchment ditch. These where the bus pickup is that going to be next to where the ditch is?
There's no parking next to the ditch.
Okay, so that bus pickup is not next to that ditch.
That's moving vehicles. There's no parking next to the ditch.
But it says bus pickup. So that means the buses will be stationary there to pick up students, where they could be stacked up?
In the afternoon.
Just in the afternoon is stacked up?
Right.
Okay. All right.
Madam
Next
Chair,
question.
are these accessibility questions?
Well, they're yes and no. I'm not sure because the way they changed the route, it was brought up when you were describing everything, so I figured that was part of it. To me, it's more of a safety issue. On the
This
next,
is the Accessibilities Commission.
Okay.
Bob, your time is almost up. Do you have one last question?
Well, you're talking about all the grades and everything. Can we go back to slide number 3?
I'm not sure which one that is, Bob.
It shows the grade from the roadway coming out by where the guard shack is all the way up to the hill. Now keep going.
This is the one that,
No, there was another one. It showed the elevation change. Well, actually, you could use that one too. Same thing. If as far as the students coming in. No, that's okay. You can go to the back one. Back up one more. It'll still have the same effect. Okay, where the grade change is, you can't see it because the pictures were on the left, but it showed the grade change of 90 to 120. So there's a 30-foot grade change.
yeah, that's right here, 90, 120.
Okay, so there's a 30-foot grade change right here, okay? When students come in, are they primarily going to come in the new access road to go park in the down parking space, or are they going to be coming up Hemlock Road?
Depends on where they're coming from. Like most drivers, they're gonna seek the, you know, the most expedient route, depending on the traffic, the time of day. It's hard to predict.
Okay, because I was just curious if there's going to be enough safety features where a car is going from 120 feet down to 90 feet, a 30-foot difference, and what speed control will be at that location. I guess there's no answer. That should end my questions. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Next, Paul Rybicki.
Good evening, Paul Rybicki, Wakefield. I just wanted to point a few things out. The first one being that the elevation of the school is really not at 143. That's the shop level. The real level of the school is 163 for the main entrance, which gives you basically almost 80 feet from going up the steps. Am I correct?
Well, we're comparing to the entry level of the school where there's access to an elevator.
No, I'm talking about the other people who are not handicapped. I'm talking about people who have to walk into this. For
as
general
our landscape architect, I'm sorry, do you finish your question?
Well, I just wanted to verify that the actual elevation change for regular users, because the main parking of 285 plus spots and the entire campus is down lower. So if you're talking about the 143, that's shop level. Yes, that gets you to an elevator and the handicap folks can take the elevator. But for general population, people are going to be coming in are actually the main level of the school is 163, correct?
The first floor level is 163, but all people arriving from the lower level are going to enter the building at 143.
I understand.
Handicapped or otherwise.
Most people are not going to be taking an elevator.
No, but they're still entering the building at 143.
Correct. Okay. Okay. So the next point I was going to make was I wanted to say how safety has been not a focus by the vote, and that it has been an embarrassment to be a citizen, to have to be on the calls and listen to some of the stuff I'm hearing about lip service to safety when I'm the one who had to ask why there's no sidewalk on your access driveway that goes out to Farm Street. The town of Wakefield has enforced it, but you guys spent 4 minutes saying how much safer it would be without a sidewalk. So you guys have been absolutely the wrong direction on safety since day one, and the 1,100 feet of ramp and the stairs are going to cause injuries to people regularly because vertical motion is harder than horizontal motion, and the design of this school is going to be a nightmare for regular bodied people who have to traverse 1,100 foot ramp every single day in all weather, and the conditions are not going to be susceptible. You will not be able to keep the ramps and steps clean at all times, and it is going to be regretted. I just say that safety is definitely not a focus.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, can we prioritize the disability-related questions and maybe get to some of these if there's time? I really feel like we might be missing a lot
There's
of
only
disability
4 questions
Okay,
left.
oh, good.
So,
I can't see how
yeah.
many are,
Yeah.
have their hands up. I hope they're disability-related.
Eleanor,
Hi there. I turned into my first Disability Commission, Conservation Commission hearing back in September or October. And, the first quote I heard was, when sidewalks came up, was the school's decision to not put in a sidewalk was well thought out by the project team. So then I started looking at the planning documents, looking at that site and understanding there was already 30 acres of developed land. I wanted to understand that better. And I wanted to point out, you have a document that was submitted to the MSBA called the Evaluation of Site Alternatives. And I'm glad to hear you talking about accessibility now, but it did not appear to be a factor on the evaluation matrix. I also think it's worth people on this call taking a moment to review that document because there were other alternatives. And I'd like to read a quote because I think you were inaccurate with David Hoff's statement. And it said that for the football field location, the option cites the new school and the 2 flat portions of the site to the west of the existing school. These 2 areas are approximately 28 feet in elevation, which equals 2 floor levels. The results in a building with minimal blasting as it steps up the hillside. And then it says, in part, to support the C3 location was the proposed location of the new school. It allows it to occur with the least amount of disruption to the existing school of any option. The district gains additional athletic fields with this option and maintains the potential of reserving the current football field track for future development as a hockey rink. So to me, it sounds like there were alternatives. And if you wanted expanded athletic fields and a hockey rink, then say it. Let's own the decision. But now back to my question. If we can go back to the drawing and if you can point out where all the sidewalks are in the path. I have an extended family, 3 in wheelchairs, deaf, visually impaired, and then limited and other stuff. So I have enough experience at our family functions of people getting in and out of buildings. I'm pretty sensitive to, needing to have sidewalks and parking lots in schools. So I would appreciate if you could just point it all out. That would be great.
First of all, before we start, there will be no hockey rink at Northeast Metro Tech. Again, this is one of these mistruths that's being, carried from meeting to meeting, despite how many times I say it. This meeting's being recorded, so at some point, if, for some reason a magical skating rink appeared, be more than happy for you to take a copy of this recording and share it with, anybody who listens. Secondly, this is a Disability Commission meeting. These are questions that are coming up every week or every other week in our Conservation Commission meetings. It's sad that this meeting was hijacked for that purpose. But, I do appreciate, some of the issues that you have shared. And I would ask if my team answer that question, please.
Carl, did you want to explain the light blue dashed lines as being the pedestrian routes as shown graphically on this plan?
I think you just did, didn't you?
Muted. I was talking there and I was muted. I'm sorry. The color coding on this plan shows all of the accessible routes on the both, pedestrian routes from the street into the building, all the way to the building. I know it's a big site, so it's hard to see them all, but there is a sidewalk coming in from Farm Street, even though there aren't connecting farm or sidewalks there as yet on the public street. There's a sidewalk coming up to the west end of the building here, entering the building in an accessible route. There's sidewalk all along the front of the building, entering these other routes. There's the accessible path that we described from the lower parking up to here, as well as connecting to the athletic fields here. And there's a sidewalk coming in. Again, even though there's not a public sidewalk on Hemlock Road, there's a sidewalk coming in from Hemlock Road that connects to the accessible routes.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, Brown.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for all of the information. Can I please see one of those great 3D schematics that I'm seeing for the first time this evening? If you could please click through some of these great slides to those 3D renderings.
I'm sorry, 3D of the walkway?
Yes, please. I guess it's, yeah. And there was another one that showed, I guess it was more of a bird's eye view. Not of the walkway itself, but of the whole school. I'm sorry, I misdirected you.
Not this one?
No, it showed the parking lot on the left.
These are the latest ones. The earlier one is purely schematic. This one?
No, it shows more of the, I guess it would be the western end of the school, I think. Do you have a rendering that shows the western end of the school?
Yes.
That, okay. Now where are the stairs going to be?
They're inside the building. You can't really see them from this exterior view.
No, the exterior stairs is what I'm talking about.
Oh, down the other end of the building.
Okay, all right.
This is the west end. They're on the east end.
Can you please show me the best view of that, please?
Well, there really isn't one. This one?
Well, no, isn't that
That's the east end. This is
that's
coming
the
up.
ramp. Where are the stairs?
Those are stairs right there.
I see 5 stairs. Where's the rest of them?
This is the only view that showed stairs other than the ones you just said you.
I'm sorry. I guess I'm confused because I thought there were like 100 stairs or something like that. And then you said it was down to 60 stairs?
That's correct.
Okay, and where are those? Do you have a showing those?
Yes. Just a moment.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Right there.
Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Those visuals are really, really helpful. I think I had a question too. The advisory meetings are on Zoom. Is that correct? I think Mr. DeBerry said that.
The advisory meeting, I didn't say we have advisory meetings. I said I have an advisory team that I work with. I can have them, they're informal meetings. They're not part of the building process because 90% of what we do is Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 6 at night. So it's not an official meeting. It's people who advise me on different aspects.
Oh,
so
I
then
see. I'm
I
sorry.
can advise the board.
I misunderstood because you invited someone else to join those.
Yes, and I
those
said
meetings.
because she had mobility issues that I said she could be on Zoom if she needed to be.
Okay. All of the intro information is fine tonight, and I do appreciate particularly these new renderings, but none of it really addresses the reason why we're here tonight, and that's the concerns of this highly bifurcated campus, the upper and lower campus. The stairs and the ramp are impediments. There's no getting around that. You can call it a nature walk. whatever you want to call it, but they are impediments. And I consider myself an able-bodied person, and man, I would not want to be going up and down those stairs, particularly at night. So I just think that there's been so much expense and mitigation and planning that wouldn't have been necessary if the school had been built on another site. And I know Mr. DeBerry said that that's not possible, but he really didn't offer any specifics as to why.
Right.
And I think that the ramps and the stairs, belie the design itself belies the words that say, we're concerned about safety, and we're concerned about being an inclusive campus. The design itself is not inclusive.
Right.
And I'm very concerned about that.
Right. So again, to go back to my intro was, in 20 years, I'm so happy to get together people from the disability community. And again, it's sad that we're having discussions that have been discussed at other commissions and are discussed at our school committee meetings and our building committee meetings when people show up. I wish we could have taken more advantage of the disability issues tonight. And I'd love if there's people out there who have questions, not about the selection process or safety, but that'll come in future meetings. Their disability questions, because those are the people who we're here to talk about and who we're trying to make this project the best possible project for.
Right, and I
so
think that you've had a lot of input as to how to make this project even.
And if I could
better.
interrupt, I'd like to get to the 4 last people that have their hands raised, because it's getting late. Thank you, I appreciate it. Jennifer?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jennifer Fanning from Wakefield. I do think my question relates to disability. If Mr. Franceschi would be willing to put up the site plan picture with that shows the aerial view with the ramp and also the lower parking lot in it. I have 2 questions about, well, I guess a question and a concern about the road. It looks like that students who use both the ramp and the stairs to get up to the school, either for their school day or to use the athletic fields, will have to cross a road. I understand that road is too steep for sidewalks. So my first question is, what is the grade of the road?
So the grade of the road is around 9 to 10% along that section, but we do have a leveling off area at the crosswalk. One thing I didn't mention, but since you brought it up, we do have a flashing beacon for a pedestrian crossing facing in both directions there, as a indicator for a pedestrian, a safe pedestrian crossing for drivers.
I'm glad to hear that beacon will be there. I do have concerns about students crossing that road all time of day, all different weather conditions, with the road being so steep, because it requires not only the first car to stop at the crosswalk, which means they're not on their phone, they see the lights, and they stop for a student, but it means the cars behind them have to stop on time as well. And if any of them don't, then you have a series of collisions that I think puts students at risk as they cross that road every day, morning and afternoon, but also I'm sure throughout the day. And my next question is about around end of day when students are leaving the school, with the campus being split into an upper and lower campus, with the athletic fields being on the lower campus. Looking at this, it looks like students who participate in athletics, either as athletes or as support staff or friends, or just want to go sort of participate in all of campus life, which I hope all students will be able to do, will have to cross not only the steep road to get down to the lower campus and the fields, but then it looks like pedestrians will outlet essentially onto the parking lot, where they'll then have to cross the parking lot to get to the fields. And it looks like there are several points where students might sort of flood across the parking lot at a busy time of day to get to all of those athletic fields. I do think it's a disability issue. I think some students, are more susceptible to, being injured by vehicles the more they have to cross kind of various roads, especially when they're steep.
Sure. I can answer that. I mean, again, it's a safety issue that we're working on. And currently we have 18 staff members currently at the current building who work and do parking lot security and parking lot monitoring at the end of the day. So those are contractual positions. It's part of our teachers union contract that they have all department heads do parking lot duty, as well as all of our security and all of our building level administrators. So it's something that all schools deal with, that we will have a person stopping traffic. We will have a person at all access routes that students are entering and exiting. So it's something that we are currently dealing with, and we do a great job, and we will do so with the new campus as well.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to the next person, please, Sasha.
Hi, thank you. I'm a Melrose taxpayer. I have an autistic child that is, I have to disagree with this design. I do care about the forest, but after learning about the design, I need to point out that my autistic child won't ever take an elevator, won't ever take a ramp, won't walk to the school the way that this has been set up. She has significant noise challenges. Any changing or chaotic situations will be a major deterrent to any child that has a disability, including alterations to everyday schedule. So I just want to make it clear that although people seem to think that this is a great setup and kids are going to love it, there are children who have neurotypical situations that will have major challenges with the way that this design is implemented. And I haven't heard anybody talk about that at all. I know that we're talking about mobility situations, but there's also other disabilities that appear to not have been taken into consideration at all. So what are you going to do with a kid who won't get into an elevator or won't go up the ramp or is going to refuse to go to school because they have all these challenges that they have to overcome? It just doesn't seem, it just doesn't seem feasible. It really doesn't make any sense, in my opinion.
So I've never been to a school that doesn't have elevators and stairs. Unfortunately, there are students that Northeast isn't the right fit. And I'll give you an example with, you mentioned, auditory sensitivity issues. We're a vocational school. So if you go into one of our shops, you have you have saws going, you have, hammers banging, you have all sorts of issues in that, we haven't always been the right fit for every single student with a disability. And that's why, during the IEP process, a big part of that IEP process is the placement issue. So I wish that, we were the right fit for every student, but you're right. There are times when, disabilities, unfortunately, don't work well with a vocational technical school. But I can assure you, when we do have students with extreme issues, that we do everything we can to try to work out a plan and make Northeast the right fit. But sometimes in the end that we do have to refer students to other placements. And, that's an unfortunate reality, but I do give you my word, we would make every best effort.
And I appreciate that. But now you're adding another layer of a challenge to a kid. So now the kid not only has to try to attend a vocational school, which a lot of kids who have disabilities don't have advantages like kids that don't have disabilities. So now you're layering on top of that all of these additional challenges. So I just hope that
I'll give you I can give you an
you
example.
take that into consideration.
And it's one that we discussed a little earlier. If your student had in it, first of all, the buses would go to the main level. So you wouldn't have to deal with the ramping system in the stairs, except for some, times. Second piece, what do we do right now? We have no elevator. We have no handicapped accessibility. We work closely with our adjustment counselors. We try to schedule students in classrooms that fit their needs. So we have many students. We have a student right now with the wheelchair. We have no access to the second floor. We schedule all his classes so that he doesn't need to go and use stairs because he can't, or because we don't have an elevator. We would still individualize your students' needs to the best possible ability. And again, that's why a student who is in a wheelchair left a public school with a brand new state-of-the-art high school to come to Northeast. It was because we are friendly and we do everything possible to meet the needs of the students. I wish, I could give you a better answer, but that's the reality.
Thank you, Mr. DeBarry. We've got just two more questions. Linda Ireland.
Thank you. Linda Ireland, Melrose. Could we go back to the rendering of the path number 3?
Is this a disability related question?
Yes, it is.
Specifically disability, not because a disabled person can
be
part of any question.
I would just like to look at.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
The 3D view of number 3, and my concern with the ramp, which is incredibly long, and I wanted to see that view in the rendering of number 3, if it's possible.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not sharing the screen.
No.
I have a nice view of it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize. It's been a long night.
So I wanted to point out that what we're looking at here from this crosswalk and then the ramp going up to the building is roughly maybe half of the actual distance. I don't think we have a really good appreciation, first of all, of how long 1,100 feet is, or 800 feet. In terms of football fields, you're talking 2 to 3 football fields. This is a very long ramp. But what terrifies me is that I walk on slip-resistant treks at places like Plum Island, and it is scary in winter. Like, it's really scary. It ices over easily, it's slippery, and it's dangerous. I mean, what experience do people have in using this as a primary way for all the students who drive, which is 40% of the seniors and some percentage of the juniors, and the largest parking lot at the base of the hill? Is there good data on whether or not this is actually a safe and acceptable method of getting students up the hill?
Madam Chair, I can respond to that slip resistance question. Composite decking comes in all shapes and sizes. Some have more plastic ingredients than others, and some have more, the other component, primary component, is like a sawdust component. And depending upon their ingredients and the surface texture, the slip resistance varies considerably. We've looked at that really closely, and our specifications are written to only accept the materials with the highest slip resistance. So they will be code compliant on a ramp at 1 and 12. But I totally understand the slipperiness from an experiential standpoint. Just out here where I live in South Boston, DCR has 2 different decking systems. One was installed later than the other. They used pure plastic for their decking on a portion of the boardwalk, and the other portion has the higher slip resistant product. When I'm out there running in the rain, the pure plastic is very slippery, even though it has a texture to it. So I'm very familiar with that as a product, and it does vary widely, and we're only specifying the product that does have that slip resistance.
And we should mention also, David, in our research, the photo on the left there, I believe, is Mount Rushmore, a national monument that's installed this. And is it DCR's property at Purgatory Chasm in Massachusetts is also installing a similar system?
Correct. Yep.
So it's not something that, you know, we're taking off of a residential back porch. It has been done in other similar settings.
So my other question has to do with the length of the ramp, which is considerable. Have any estimates been done in terms of how long it will take students to get up there? And I also noticed that the locker room building, which was originally proposed to as in response to the distance from the athletic fields to the school and the time that you actually needed that locker room building, it's now being shown as an alternate. So is that locker room building going to be in the school and at the end? Because otherwise, that's an awfully long way to go back to find locker rooms and toilets.
It's an alternate in that it's not guaranteed as this part of this phase, but it will ultimately be there. If it's not done by this project's budget, it will be done by the school as part of their construction budget.
Okay, thank you. And that does then, that transfers presumably the costs onto the operating cost rather than the construction costs.
It's part of the educational curriculum for, the carpentry and several of the shops. They actually do construction projects every year. In this case, they would just be doing one for themselves as opposed for one of the sending communities.
And I have one more question that's not strictly disability, but it is maybe
And
related
then
to
I'm
that.
going
And
to
that is,
pause you there, please, because we have somebody else that needs to ask a question and it's already 9:20.
okay, it was about the Breakheart parking being only 12 spaces, and that is a long way for people now in terms of the distance to the actual Breakheart entrance. And I wanted to know how that would vary with the time of the day, if there would be more spaces available off school hours.
Yeah, we have no comment on that right now. At some later point, we may.
Thank you. And Megan?
I'm Megan McDonough from Melrose, and I am a disabled person. And I would like to just point out that for us, safety is a disability matter because it affects how we move through space. And I think we are all here tonight because we care about that. In my professional life, I did help people move through space. I would build an environment and then in a week, sometimes move 126,000 people through space in San Francisco before I got disabled. With other large crews of people. And I'm wondering, I have a number of questions, I'll try to be quick. With that ramp, if the rails will be removed in certain places, but a double railed system is ADA compliant, how could the rails be removed in certain places?
Madam Chair, at landings where you have a level landing that's close to grade, anything less than, anything less than 30 inches does not require a guardrail. So those are locations that would not have the guardrails alongside them.
And are we being shown landings that are flat, or I think that what I'm seeing is stairs crossing the ramp and not flat landings? Is there a picture where there's flat landings too?
Every 30 feet, there is a flat landing. It's maybe a little hard to see. Yeah, this view, I think, is easier to see the level landing.
And then is it required for every so often on a ramp to have a toilet facility? Every so often in this like built environment for someone to be able to get to a toilet, is that in the ADA?
Not to my knowledge.
When you get on the ramp, you're on there for the length of it, right? You can't just be like, oh, I have to use, I have a condition, I have to use the bathroom and get off of it halfway up.
I think that's the case in even a long parking lot. I mean,
I'm just
I'm not aware, Megan, of any standard.
Okay, I can ask that Architectural Access Board because I am curious. And then I don't see lighting systems, but lighting system is part of ramp systems, right? Is that correct?
That is
Yes, it's
correct.
intended to have lights on it. They're not shown on this rendering.
Can you tell me what the estimated cost of this ramp is? And the lighting systems and do you have that somewhere?
That's not
Not
really
at this
disability
time, but-
related.
Right.
Well, I'm
We
just
can
wondering
get
what the
that.
cost would be to have it versus not have it. And then,
Again, that's not, we're not thinking about cost when we think about its students and, community members with disabilities. So,
I'm just thinking if there is this other document that I've seen in the project documents about alternate sites where at least one meets the educational program goals, that doesn't seem to require a ramp. So I'm just wondering, as a cost comparison, if you actually don't have it broken down, then that's fine. I'll move on to my next question.
again, I have no comment.
The outfit,
Megan, I'm gonna cut you off, please. Your 3 minutes are up and it's 9:25 and it's late. So I'm gonna thank the Mr. DeBarry and the project team for coming. We very much appreciate your time and for staying until 9:25 with us. The commission will meet next Monday and put together any recommendations we have and submit them to the town of Wakefield for the, for the zoning board discussion. But
Thank you
again,
so much for having us.
thank you. Appreciate your time. Appreciate all the information. And if you would consider some of the Disability Commission members, when you have some meetings that are pertinent to that, we would be appreciative to be included.
Absolutely.
Definitely like it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Good night, all.
Thank you
Good
very
night.
much.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye, everyone.